Hello everyone, I'm Izzy Waz and welcome to Hot Stuff, where we discuss hot topics that we think deserve your attention. From social issues to popular culture, we'll be letting you into what's going on in Taiwan, driven by real people and stories. Today's guest on Hot Stuff is Kaitlin Hao. Kaitlin is an East Asian Languages and Cultures master's student at Columbia University. She also holds a BA in History of Art and Architecture from Harvard University. Kaitlin runs the TikTok account at Happy Ending Message, which teaches art history, media studies, and East Asia to a broad audience. The account has amassed over 38,000 followers, with some of the videos receiving millions of views. Kaitlin's research seeks to discover how social media existed in Sinophone communities prior to the internet age as far back as the 1970s and 80s. Her writing and projects have appeared in the Harvard Art Museum's Hyperallergic, Art Asia Pacific Magazine, Sign Theatre Magazine, and Moon Press. Welcome to Hot Stuff, Kaitlin!
Thank you so much for having me.
So today's focus of the conversation is going to be about your account and, accessibility and art. I think it's really cool what you're doing. Now, how did you first become interested in East Asian art history, and what motivated you to start sharing it on social media?
Yeah, so I was an art history undergraduate student, and I took a lot of classes in East Asian art history, and I always noticed that those classes, the number of students who take those classes are much lower than the amount of students that you usually get in a big Western art history class. Oftentimes, these undergraduate classes taught in universities really only teach, if you're taking an introductory art class, it's probably going to be a Western art class. And that's such a shame. And I went to, you could say I received one of the best sort of art history educations, some would say, in the world. And if I was privileged enough to receive those kinds of lessons and learn from literally the top experts in the field, I think it's my responsibility to pay that forward and share what I've learned with a broader audience. And I started just posting videos, and I really realized that people are really interested, and many people don't get the chance to take an art history class in college, let alone an East Asian art history class. So if I'm able to share just a piece of it, then that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And why did you choose TikTok as your platform to share your content on?
Yeah, so I mean, I am a avid TikTok consumer myself. I think especially during COVID, and the most fascinating videos that I was seeing, I was learning a bunch of art history from these online creators on TikTok. And it's really a conversation. Like, someone makes a video and it either triggers something in my memory, or I make a video responding to their work. So it just so happened that I saw to me, what was the most fascinating art history content being produced on that platform. So I just went along with what I was seeing. And
TikTok is originally known, well, right at the start, for like dances and like, I guess, shorter form content. So how do you kind of condense these maybe like complex art history topics into short and engaging videos, especially, a lot of people might not have an art history background?
Yeah, for me, I think I tried to make my videos along sort of two lines. The first sort of example or type of video that I make is just explaining one thing about one work of art. And if my audience understands that one thing about that one artwork, then that's good enough for me. So for example, like, why are Chinese artists so obsessed with rocks? Like, why? And if I can answer that question in one sentence, and have someone learn that, then that's good enough for me. There's no need for like a giant lecture. 1 minute video will do. The second is like connecting whatever's happening in the pop culture scene at the moment to an art historical or media historical background. So for example, there was this trend of like this mainland Chinese woman who would like dance around and like do all these like outrageous things, and like she would get like hundreds of millions of views. And I recognized like a lot of the skits that she was doing actually were borrowed from like Hong Kong films from the 90s and a certain type of comedy called Uli Tao or Mole Tao. So I created a video explaining sort of the historical background to whatever trend was happening at the time. And I think those types of videos are like my most successful ones. They're just sort of either giving a background to a trend that's happening at the moment or just answering like a really weird question.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me on to how there's so much involved in like art history, East Asian art history. How do you go about choosing your topics?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to what I was talking about before. Like, I really see this page as a document of my own education. I borrow things that I've learned in art history class, or a paper that I wrote for that class, or something that my professor taught me that I thought was really cool, and I just want to pass it along. So I am deeply influenced by the classes that I took myself in college.
And how has social media, and I guess TikTok specifically, impacted the accessibility of art history for a broader audience?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because academia famously has a very small audience. If you're publishing a paper, you're lucky if like a few hundred people read it. You're lucky if like 10 people read it. Whereas on TikTok, I was getting engagement levels that I didn't even know was possible. And with that like comes its own can of worms. I won't say that one's more important or one's harder than the other. But at the same time, I think I feel the most fulfilled when I know that my content appeals to so many different kinds of people, and such large numbers of people.
Yeah, I think it's a great kind of thing because, you know, academia, like you said, it's not the most accessible thing, and especially if you do love your subject so much like you do, you kind of want to share that with everyone. So I think it's great that you're kind of unpacking these like topics or whatever to let everyone in on the conversation, and also like, you know, have their opinion and keep them in the know. I think it's like super cool, so kudos to you. And do you think the art world and bigger institutions like museums and galleries, do you think they understand the importance of social media and all this and trying to make stuff more accessible?
Yeah, and I have been working with museums in the United States, either doing content for them, for example, teaching lessons inspired by their exhibitions, or even working with their social media teams directly to try to sort of show them what I'm doing. And that, I would say, unfortunately, has been an uphill battle. Museums and art institutions certainly know that social media is hugely important. But I think currently it's from a marketing standpoint. They see it as an outlet to get people to come to their museum and to advertise their exhibitions, but not so much using it as a place where someone can get a very detailed sort of art history lesson. And I think what I've learned from my content is like it doesn't even have to be long. Someone can learn a lot in just 1 minute. And I think I hope museums will discover that their social media pages, which they all have, are not just a place to advertise yourself, but to teach people. It's not just an outlet to participate in like a trend and get a lot of views. It's a place that you can show parts of a collection that you can't in the galleries, or it's a place to give other people besides like art historians with PhDs a chance to teach people about art.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of potential there, but I don't think the art world has even begun
to
No,
it's definitely an interesting kind of can of worms to open. But I've been following kind of like news, like Channel 4 News, The Guardian, some like UK places, and they're on TikTok and Instagram, and they're doing like these little videos explaining a phenomenon that's happened or an event or something, which I think is great, because I it's not just about, I don't know, I think it comes with a sense of responsibility. Like they genuinely, and including yourself, want to reach people and keep them updated on their field or like what's going on in the world. So I think that's really great. And is there anything that you would say that you have learned from interactions with your TikTok audience, or is there anything that you've experienced that has had an influence on your own perspective of art history?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing is that you can never underestimate your audience. I get fact checked all the time by my audience. People will find facts that like I got wrong, even though I spend like hours researching. You don't catch everything, and my audience will catch it, and they will let me know that I was wrong. But I'm grateful for that, and honestly, like, fair game. I think like when you enter the social media scene, like, you have to be okay with like people checking you, and that goes for like my arguments too. Like, if I'm like trying to explain something and they disagree, like, they will let me know. And I think it's made me really aware of like my own sort of biases and leanings. You can say that I've been canceled before. I've been criticized that I've had like certain videos that people have pointed out things that were deeply problematic about them, and I had no idea. And I think you just have to acknowledge that there were certainly oversights whenever that happens. I realized that, and this platform has encouraged me to create content from my own perspective. Like, whenever I've tried to step out of my own sort of bandwidth of knowledge, that's where I get in trouble. That's when you get into like the cancel waters. So it really is like sticking to like what I know and what I've experienced and making content from that perspective. And in some ways, like, people will find that in of itself like probably problematic, but that's the way that I feel like this platform and my audience has encouraged me to grow.
Yeah, I think that's a positive thing, actually, in that you're also gaining things from this experience and learning things that people, whether it's like a fact or a point of view that you haven't maybe thought of before. So I think it's like kind of a useful conversation and such, which people don't always think of like social media like that.
No, I think I don't know, maybe it's a hot take, but like cancel culture maybe it like does have an upside. Like, there's so many creators out there, like, we don't have to be experts in everything, and like there is so much that you can do just within your own space that like I think you do have to like leave that space for other people, and you have to be okay with doing that. And I've met like And you also connect with just like fascinating people on the platform of itself. I found research subjects through it. I found like PhD people that like can help me fact check through that. So it's not like you're always just like interfacing with like 16-year-olds either all the time.
I'm sure there are some of them there though as well.
Oh, definitely. But at the same time, like you are just finding like very fascinating people that like will have that you can benefit from their expertise and knowledge.
Yeah. What's the like general community like? Of like, I guess other people who are doing like educational content as such in a similar field. Is there a lot of them?
I wouldn't say there's many, but it's certainly like a small circle, and I think the circle that I fall into are people who make content on China or the Sinophone region, and it's usually people who do like new current events, news, as well as like popular culture reporting. So those people it's been great to have them as role models, and they inspire a lot of the content that I make myself.
Are there any, in this journey, are there any kind of misconceptions or stereotypes around East Asian art that you have felt that you have to kind of debunk through your content?
I think it's a balance, and I think sometimes like what I've felt the biggest responsibility in is like sometimes I can like accidentally make the stereotype or like create a misconception, and I think that comes from like, unfortunately, when you're a creator, your desire to get views. I always try to have a hook to my videos, and sometimes people like accuse my hooks of being sensationalist. I've been accused of being a CIA operative because my hooks for some reason have been interpreted as like anti-mainland China. I'm not sure why. But it's because like I'm covering documentaries or artists that invariably like make social commentary on something that's happening in China, and that is often interpreted as me being like anti-China or like making anti-Chinese content, which is hard to reconcile with. I think maybe there are some times that I have stepped into that sort of sensationalist area, and when you realize that's happening, like you just have to self-correct and reflect and try to do better next time.
Yeah, that brings us on to another interesting point as well, because you are creating educational content, so you've got this goal of educating, but you also, like you said, views are coming into it, you know, possibly even like financial opportunities where you will be getting money from it. How do you balance that all up?
Yeah, I think it's a constant challenge, and I think you just have to stick to like your lane and know what your goal is in creating this content, and if you can like own up to yourself, then sort of whatever else may come you just have to be okay with that. I always like ask myself, like, is this trying to get people to see a new perspective? Is this teaching someone something new about East Asia, particularly China, which faces so much sort of misunderstandings, especially in the United States? And if I can say yes to like both those questions, then whatever opportunities come in that field, like I can handle it.
And another question I have for you is that some people, maybe especially older generations, feel that we are too woke, or like kind of like the snowflake generation. And from the comments that you receive online or from kind of interacting with people online, do you think an essence of this is true, or how do you feel about this kind of like issue of being woke?
Yeah, I think maybe it's less about the woke question, or as like when I tell people I do this as in my spare time, people are like, oh, like that's a great hobby, or that's so cute, or like they don't see it as like something serious,
right?
But like I want to tell these professors or like oftentimes scholars in my field, like I am I don't know, I'm teaching like real people, and I'm teaching real people like on a huge scale, and like they do fall into that age bracket of like, I don't know, our woke generation. The majority of my viewers are the ages from 18 to 26, and I do sort of make content in that niche. I talk about race, I talk about sexuality, gender identity, and those people find those topics fascinating, and I find them fascinating. So if my content does cater to a specific ideology, I guess you could call it, that is what it is. It's woke. But I think I try to have a scholarly interpretation to it. I try to look at whatever artist that I'm looking at, or media event. I try to look at it in its historical and like, I don't know, cultural, where it's situated historically and culturally. So perhaps it's like woke, or perhaps it's speaking to like a certain generation's interests, but it's all in the vein of trying to teach somebody about like something from a historical or educational perspective.
I think that's very well put. And unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time. What would you say the biggest lesson is that you have learned from your journey in sharing content on TikTok?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll go back to what I said before, is like, never underestimate your audience. Never underestimate that people are too young, or like too left, too woke to like learn and engage critically and like educationally. You will be ever stunned by how like brilliant our generation is, and the digital audience is, and you will be blown away by its scale. And there's just so much potential in terms of using this content to foster a new generation of scholars who will engage with the world more critically, but also like from a perspective that you're concerned about like creating content or like contributing to the world that it affects as many people as possible. I think that's like what social media teaches you. It's like, it's about the big picture, it's about the big numbers, it's about like teaching on a bigger scale, and not just like from the ivory tower. So from what you've said and your experience, does that give you hope for the future? I think it does. As much as like we think that social media, we discuss how social media is like a really scary thing, from my perspective, even though I've certainly gotten blowback and been really scared at times by the internet, like, you will be endlessly blown away by how generous people are with their time, with their likes, and how brilliant they are, and how much they have to say. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for listening to Hot Stuff. Thank you. Bye. Bye.